All right, hey guys, welcome to the Follow Boss office hours. We're going to be covering stages today. I'm joined by Jeremy Smith. How are you, Jeremy?
I am good, Lee. How about you?
Very, very good. Ready to dig into some stages and such. So let's see. I'm going to stop sharing my screen there for a minute. See people hopping on. We're also live in the Success Community Facebook group, and we are recording. Although, of course, the recording will be available in the book, in the book of Face, after we complete this session. It will be available on demand if you wish. So, Jeremy, let's talk a little bit about stages before we share your screen. So, to me, stages are essentially the primary categorization, right? It's kind of like what phase is somebody in? Are they a lead or are they like in the car? So how do you guys kind of view stages internally?
Yeah, I think the best description is we want the stage to reflect the status of the relationship. We want you to, the stages can be used, I see it used for other things too, but the status of the relationship is really what we teach and our best practice. You can split that, obviously. If someone's a client, but you wanted to differentiate between buyer and seller, a lot of teams do that. But we definitely, it's my perspective that you want to keep the stage list relatively concise. You don't want to have 100 different stages that you can use. You want to, I would want to modify, again, the status of the relationship. There's obviously some personal preference there, but if it's keeping it basic in the stages and then modifying the status of the relationship with additional tags and so forth is a great way of making sure that you have the tools that you need to search through your lists and find particular folks who are in very specific examples. But stages are, there can be a really cool tool. And I think the biggest thing is that they need to be updated.
Right.
And
Yes.
that should be like a consideration after each conversation is that, so I've talked with this person, what, is there something different that I need to note? And if that note is, if that note is positive, then move them to the next stage, move them to the next part of the life cycle.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I'm glad you said it that way because it kind of triggered something in my brain, to be honest. Like, the idea to me is that the stages should change. Like that's literally the whole point, right? Like we're trying to get people from sphere or lead or whatever into some sort of transactional phase or some sort of like nurture, like take them off my radar type of phase. It's funny because I deal with this a lot with people where they want to have like a stage that's like active buyer, like future buyer, possible buyer. And to me, that's not what those are for. Like that's either more a tag or a deal. Like there's other ways to do that. But I agree with you in that they should generally be, you don't need 100 of them. I mean, if you're a huge company, maybe, but and this goes down to something else that you and I have talked a little bit about. One, we'll dig into this more. They need to be defined. One of the things I love about Follow Boss, you can make your own, you can change the order, you can change the names of a lot of them. But that also doesn't create a definition automatically. So you need to define to yourself or to your team or to your brokerage, like, what do these mean? What does nurture mean? Does it mean you didn't get them? Does it mean you talked to them and they said, call me in 12 months? Is a hot prospect like ready to get in the car? Or is it that they just answered the phone? Like what is all that? So,
right. I mean, and to that point, for folks who are just starting with Follow Boss or maybe are using our default stages, we have definitions for those. I'll go ahead and share my screen and just pull up the help.
Please do. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm a fan of the default stages. I like these. If you don't have a better plan, I think these are great stages. We don't have a different
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, this is our help documents in our library about lead stages, and we break them all out. So when you start with a Follow Boss account, these are the default stages that are added. And a lead is a lead, someone who's brand new, you haven't talked to them yet, hot prospect, someone who's ready to go within the next 3 months. Nurture who needs to move, who's moving a little bit slower. Active client is someone you're working with right now that closed, is literally that, a closed deal that you've worked on. Keep them in the stage while you wrap up paperwork, send a thank you card, and ask for referrals and reviews. That's great. We'll come back to this, but not only that, but we have some cool new tools that you can use if you're using the closed stage to help you as the agents keep the relationship strong with your clients that you've just closed on. We'll come back to that. We'll loop back around. Past client, someone who worked with you in the past, not currently back in the market, but there for you to reach out to on a regular basis and see when they might be, or if they have referrals for you. Sphere. Again, this is for folks you want to stay in touch with, maybe not exactly past clients, etc. But you want to reach out to see if you can generate any new business. Unresponsive, someone who stopped responding to you, but you want to continue to try to get in touch with. And trash is a functional stage in Follow-Up Boss. If you're an agent on a team, you don't have the ability to delete a lead. That's up to the admins, but you can put them in your trash, and therefore they disappear from your lists unless you specifically add a filter in that's going to pull trash back in. So if they're putting them in the trash, that's basically a way of getting them out. And of course, I see some pretty basic, pretty regular adjustments to this. Like some folks will switch active client to buyer and seller, the 2 stages instead of one, to keep those folks, separated and be able to make it a little bit easier to keep track. Not to mention a cool tip that this actually didn't occur to me till earlier this week when someone said, hey, so I have a buyer list and a seller list just so I can see if I can match those 2 people up. If I have buyers who are interested in the properties that I'm listing. So that's why I keep them separate. And I was like, you know what? That actually hadn't occurred to me. So that's a good tip there too. And one other stage that I see a lot is instead of just sphere. So your sphere of influence might be different from other contacts or vendors or something like that you might not want to use for marketing purposes, but you want to break out vendor or contact for those folks that you do business with, to help keep them a little separate in Follow-Up Boss as well. Those are the 3 changes, and those are the 2 changes I see the most of.
Cool. Yeah, I think that's great, and I like keeping it simple. I like using these. Can you actually drop the link to this in the chat? And then we have a quick question in the chat that I want to answer too. Also, if you guys have questions, if you could drop them in the Q&A ideally. Henry, I see yours in chat. We'll answer that. If you guys have questions, drop them in the Q&A. If you want to come on screen and chat with us and give examples or ask questions, that is 100% a thing as well. So we'll get into that in just a minute, but you're definitely welcome to hop on and ask questions. So one other thing I wanted to cover super quick, and I'm making some notes because I want to not forget a few things, but another style of stage that has been really highly recommended by Barry Jenkins, and some of it specific to YLOPO and really also just Follow-Up Boss directly, is the idea of more of a time to transact based stage. And I'm a big fan of this. Personally, I actually like this setup better. This is more how my brain works and how a lot of people I work with, kind of how their brains work. That said, especially in a team environment, just having agents potentially just have 10 to 20 people that are in ready to transact next 30 days or ready to go look next 30 days type of situation can absolutely make sense. So there's all kinds of videos on various stages, and I'll drop one into the Facebook group on this thread so people can see it. But basically, conceptually, the idea is that he names them, I think, with numbers now. Now, the smart lists are numbers, the stages are with letters, I believe, where it's like A is something like 30 days to transact, B is 90 days, and I'm paraphrasing here, so if somebody has it handy or knows it off the top of their head, feel free to drop it in. But the idea is that the stages move along based on the time when the person seems to be ready to transact. So it's kind of hotness, for lack of a better term. And so I do really like that. Henry, do you want to add something to that, Jeremy, specifically?
Oh, no, no.
Well, I was going to answer Henry's questions real quick, which is
Yeah.
a good one. We might actually have him hop on if he wants to explain a little more. His question says, how do you use stages when working with other brokers? For example, like if a broker is sending an inquiry that comes in to follow up Austin. Personally, I'm not a big fan of having agents in my CRM. That said, if you're recruiting or if you may do a transaction with them and you want to add them for some reason, I would potentially create a stage for that. That's not a bad use of a stage because they're not a hot prospect. They're never going to transact with you. Like that might be a good way to make sure they're not getting any marketing or getting any brain space. But if you want to keep them in there, I would probably consider a stage. What do you think about that, Jeremy?
Yeah, I mean, I guess ideally I would want to know the contact information for their buyer and keep the buyer as a contact, and maybe add a stage for broker, broker lead or something like that, and so that they can do that. But you can, yeah, I mean, I guess that, yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, and like I said, there's even though we want, but the stages are also here, and they obviously can be updated. So these are good. This is great. I mean, we want you to use the tools. I mean, Follow Up Boss is a toolkit. Um, so yeah, that sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah, cool.
And
So I think, one of the things I see, and I know, Jeremy, we talked about this before, I think one of the biggest obstacles I see to success with stages is also the clear, communication of what the stages are, but also not necessarily expecting agents, again, assuming a team or brokerage environment, to really change every stage all the time. To me, I try to teach people around the idea of, like, let's get the agent to move it from lead to something. And then ideally, I think somebody internally, admin or closing coordinator, should kind of take over from, okay, the agent converted the lead. Now let's get it into pending or closed or whatever is the most appropriate. I just don't think it's realistic, especially in a team or brokerage environment, to expect an agent to go from lead to nurture to active to hot to active to pending to like, not a lot of people can do all that. So I view it as kind of a pick your battles type of thing, where it's like, if you can just get them to take it out of lead and get it into something, then that's where it's at. So
that really
do you guys see that a lot, Jeremy, internally?
Yeah, we see tons of teams where the leads just stay as leads, and even though there might be additional communication and outreach, and everyone's doing what they're supposed to do, they never get updated. And you can, and if you click, and when we're doing account reviews as success managers, one of the things that I always like to click in is click into their stage list from the owner account and see how many people are in stages. If you still have still have 50,000 people in leads, and there's only 12 people in hot prospects and 100 so people in past clients and so forth, then these are indicators that you're not updating it enough, or even that one time, to get it out of that lead stage, so that it doesn't keep firing in, it doesn't make your admins and owner nervous that there's too many leads just stuck and not being outreached to, but that also does other things. And updating the stage, if you've got your smart list working for you, whether you're using Barry's style or using the Follow Up Boss, our recommended smart list or the Melville method, and so on and so forth, having the filters set on your smart list is really an important tool to make sure that you're reaching out the right amount to the right people. So updating the stage and having that as a filter is a hugely useful tool, and will help, and it definitely will help all of us. We can help everybody be more efficient and effective, but at the same time, it's keeping better track. And that's part of what as a CRM, which, that's part of what we're here for, to maintain organization, right? We're here to keep you on track and to help you keep track of all the folks in your list, not just have another, just a database. We want you to do stuff with the data.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And one thing, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but one of the things that I'm personally a big fan of, and this is coming more too with automations and some other things that are coming or in beta, but I'm a really big fan of the MailChimp integration with Follow Boss. And one of the things I always did, so one team I used to work with, I set it up where everybody, I think in Nurture, just automatically got like a monthly email. When I say automatically, we still had to create the email, but the Nurture stage was the trigger for all these people just get a monthly cool things to do in Atlanta or whatever. I have somebody else I work with where we have it to where the contact stage is just excluded. So you want to take somebody off the email list, or if they're whatever, then you just put them in the contact list and then at the contact stage, and then every other stage gets the email newsletter, just not that stage. So, but that is right on par with what you were just saying, Jeremy. It's like if you have good data, then you can do stuff with it. If you have 10,000 people in lead, it makes it a lot harder, to do that. And I want to wrap Henry's question because he had a quick follow-up. It sounds like he may be in a state where the communication is largely with the other brokers. I think in that case, I'd definitely make a stage, because then maybe two. I hate to say this because I don't want people in not that kind of area to do this, but maybe even two stages where it's an active broker, so you can keep track of your current, like these are my brokers that I have a deal with, that I'm communicating with consistently, and these are just brokers that are like asking me about a listing, because
Right.
those would be very different stages,
Right.
So.
Right.
So anyway, I think again, back to the giving good data, and speaking to the automations even a little bit, the idea that, do we dare go there for a second, Jeremy?
Yeah, sure. So a couple of things. Stages can, as you we've talked about how useful stages can be, kind of directions behind it. There's two ways that you can use your stages automatically to update. And one of the ways is to add them to an action plan. Action plans can contain steps that would be, and oops, see, this one has one, so that's why I wanted to pull it up. So this this particular action plan has a step where the stage is changed automatically. This one changes it to lead at the end of 271 days, to basically give these folks another, well, I'm not exactly sure why on this action plan. This is a long-term nurture one, but the stage can be changed automatically as part of an action plan. So that's a pretty powerful tool in and of itself. Lee mentioned when we were kind of prepping for this call that this is a great way to put a cap on your leads, to automatically get them into another place so that they aren't just staying in lead. And that's a really cool tool. Whether it's 45 days or 90 days, there's different ways of thinking about that, but you can that can be the last step in an action plan, is getting the stage to change, so that the lead moves into a different list, whether it goes into nurture, and then you can activate additional action plans, which I'm going to show you in just 1 second. But or it basically just changes what you're doing with this lead. It can change, if it depends on which smart list it goes into, which action plan is active on it, and it's going to change. It can hopefully change your own outlook on this particular contact.
I'm a huge fan of that. I just want to reiterate how awesome. Like, I would do this even if you don't want to have auto emails and text going out. I would just make an action plan that's named stage change after 50 days or whatever.
Yeah.
Just have it move people into nurture or whatever. That's how you keep from having 10,000 people in a lead. Just literally like, here you go. If nothing, and note that he has the box checked that says pause action plan when they're contacted, because that's the key. Because this way, if there's no contact after 50 days, this person's going to automatically move to nurture. So I don't think we could probably do a whole webinar on that. Like that would be a game changer for a lot of people,
Yeah. So
You can add a tag.
exactly.
One other quick thing I just remembered that I've done with some people is adding a tag here that says, I've done this by source for some people where it will say like, add a tag like Zillow did not convert or whatever did not convert. So you can also go back and find specific types of leads that didn't respond after the X amount of time. So this way you've
Right.
also got a tag because the stage may change or they may come back or whatever. But this way you can always go in and go, oh, you know, all these whatever types of leads didn't convert. Now we've got a tag that's automatically. And you guys did a pretty good job of sneaking these in, to be honest with you. Like I know y'all are pretty good about making announcements and you make a lot. But
Yeah.
this one even caught me by surprise. I was like, whoa.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't know when was that, because so
It's
I
been a
joined
little
Follow
while.
Boss in October and they've been here since then. So
Okay. I was gonna say it's been probably 8 months to a year. This year
gotcha.
is like, you know, this year's been like 4 years long. So
Yeah, true. Yeah, these are very, and I actually have, I've worked with a lot of teams who just have action plans running, or they have one, or their action plan is like literally just an initial text message. And then 30 days later, a stage change. And then they take care of the rest of the outreach. They take care of the rest of, you know, they don't want the automatic emails going out. But they can do these types of things. They can create tasks and so forth, and then just automatically flip things. And so Jesse mentioned, and Lee in the chat. And also remember, if you guys have other questions during this, go ahead and pop them into the Q&A so that we can go back and revisit that. And the cool thing about the Q&A, just a reminder, if you ask questions there that we don't get to, we can go back and answer those after the webinar is over. So, but anyway, that's what the action plan can do. And if you do set up an action plan like this, these two actions also are now part of our automations functionality, which is still technically in beta, but we're gonna go into it right now, because changing a stage and adding a tag can now, I'm gonna go ahead and save this as a tool, and then I'm gonna go into automations. Okay, so automations is new. It's been in beta for about a month, and we're really close to rolling it out. We want to do a few more tweaks and polishing before we roll it out. But if you want it, just let me know, and I can add it for you if you don't already have it. So automations can fire action plans based on other triggers. And we're planning other functionalities in here as well, but we're starting with action plans. So the triggers that can fire an action plan can be a tag or a stage change, or we also have triggers for website activity to capture returning leads better, the leads that are coming up. But today's about stages, so we're going to talk about this. So if you do flip that lead into nurture, we have an automation set up to help you with that automatically. All you have to do is turn this on, and if that's on, I'm sorry, I missed oh, nurture.
yeah, they change order.
Yeah, it pops to the top. That catches me every time. Yeah. So if the stage changes to nurture, it's automatically going to start this action plan. And so that one action plan that you had where a stage changes automatically directly informs another action. And so if that changes automatically on your action plan, it's automatically going to fire the buyer long-term nurture action plan. And these are all customizable. You guys can, if you have your own action plans, you could just have to designate that action plan to run based on that trigger. And you can create your own automations from scratch too. So
I'm going to throw one quick caveat on that there that I learned almost the hard way. I realized at the last minute with somebody, if you're going to trigger an action plan with this, you might consider making a 0-day step in your action plan that says pause all other action plans, because you want to make sure you're not getting people on like 9 different action plans.
Right.
So consider that, just if it's possible. So like, for example, let's just say that we have this action plan that applies when people come in, and it changes the stage to nurture, but then you have an automation that says when they go to nurture, trigger this other action plan. You might just want to put a pause all other action plans as an early step, just to avoid layers of action plans.
Right, because if the communication starts to overlap, it can become confusing for the lead, even if they're just reading your emails and not getting back in touch with you. So yeah, that's a really good first step, especially for an action plan that you're going to fire off of an automation. If you and this and obviously, and the other thing is you could copy your action plans and create another version of it if it's something you don't want to mess with, if you don't want to modify it. If you have an action plan that doesn't contain this step, so go ahead and just copy your action plan and add this step to that one and call it buyer long-term nurture 2 or automation or something like that, so that you know how to do that. So the action plan here in this particular case, this one's nurture, and it's ironically the other one that I pulled up too, where the lead change, the stage changes back to lead. Now I have to say, so this is our demo account, and sometimes it could get tinkered with. I'm not sure why this particular action plan switches back to lead, because the last step in, so this action plan is available to you guys in your action plan libraries, but these last 2 steps won't be in there because this this action plan naturally ends with a final call, just to make sure, just to have that last, that last step. But the other emails do go out. I just wanted to make sure that everyone looks for the right thing. But so the automation going can be really powerful that way if it's toggled on, and it does have to be toggled on through an admin to be utilized, and these have to be built by the admins on the accounts as well. I like to encourage my teams to collaborate. That this isn't just an admin function that admins should be in the sole proprietors of. I want agents to know that this is here. I want agents to know about how to build an action plan and then put it in place with the help of their admins, making sure that things are switched on and switching on at the right times. If you've got a brainstorm based on what we're going over here today, and you don't have admin capabilities, set up a time to talk with your team leads, talk with your admins, talk with your owners about getting some of these things in place.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea. I'm glad you said that. And I think the opposite is true too, in the sense of asking what agents are seeing, like what of these might help them have a better workflow. And it just occurred to me while you were saying that if you're struggling to get adoption with using stages like everyone is, this is a great way to get more buy-in and say like, oh, by the way, now when you change the stage to whatever, then something's going to happen on your behalf. I think that's a really powerful way to help get adoption of stages. Say, hey, if you put them in nurture, they're going to now get this automatic action plan. You can take them off your radar and go focus on your hot prospects. So I love that you said that. I think being both collaborative and that going both ways, where even the team lead could ask like, hey, what could we maybe do here to help, and it just being good for everybody. So we have a Q&A. I'm going to go check that out.
Yeah, Hunter's asking about how this could tie in with our new call action integration. Hunter, that's so new. I actually don't know how that would work together, but I mean, I will be happy to figure out what is possible there. That's a great.
That is a good one. It seems like there could potentially, I think it'd be more related to a call happening though, right? Like if you had a call, it seems like that would affect it. I mean, it can't make you call, or it could trigger a task to remind you to call via the integration. That's one thing I want to mention to people real quick too. When you're building action plans like that, make sure your tasks are uber clear. Like it doesn't have to be a call necessarily. Maybe say like, right, call and wish them happy birthday, or use call action to follow up and make a note. Like being really clear with that. But that is a great question, Hunter. I'll make a quick note of that too, Jeremy. Maybe you can help dig into that. So if anybody wants to come on or ask a question, that's what we're here for. Or to tell us how you use this.
Yeah, going back to Lee's point, while we're waiting for everyone to unmute and go ahead and ask, when you create a task, this task name field, this is you can put a lot of characters in here. You can indicate exactly, if you're going to create a task and it's going to be a text, you can put in exactly which text template you want to choose here so that you don't have to guess or make that free-form decision. If you have a specific call that you want to make, you can use a voicemail script or something like that. You can populate quite a number of characters in here, or indicate where that script lives. I mean, Follow Up Boss doesn't have a script tab, but you guys can, there's tons of different ways of storing those and pulling them up so that you can speak to someone, or leave a specific
Could you
voicemail.
put a URL in there? I mean, could you put in like a link to a Google Drive document scripts maybe? I bet you could.
Let's find out. I mean, I know you can paste the text.
I mean, you can copy and paste it, but I'd see if it's clickable. You save it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I won't even let you save it though. Or no, it did.
Well, I have to name it.
Because there's no name, right?
Yeah. Save. And then
yeah, I don't know how you test it.
I don't know. That's a good test though. But you can put a lot of detail in those tasks so that they aren't just like call or something like that. Put a little bit of, flesh it out so you, like you said, be specific. Start a call action campaign. Update this, update that.
Yeah. Does anybody that's on have an alternative overall stage setup? Like I'm a fan of the kind of hot prospect, more traditional style. I think Barry's style of time to transact, but if somebody else has another way they have things set up, I'd love to. I wish I had all the magic answers, but I really don't. So if somebody else has a way that they do it that's working, we're definitely up to hear that. Or we just have all the shyest real estate agents on the planet on today. It's okay.
Is anybody trying to unmute?
Does anyone? I ask people to post in the chat, the Q&A, or raise their hand. So between the three of those, I'm trying to keep an eye on that. So,
well,
have you seen anything else, Jeremy? I mean, you guys work with some of the bigger groups. Like, have you seen other stage setups that seem to be working for people?
Oh, I've seen stage setups. Actually, unfortunately, most of the stage setups that I see that come up are stages that don't work. It's too many choices. Keeping a concise list, as we said, is what's really going to help you move the needle so that you can update the status and update it effectively.
Right. Yeah, for sure. So Kim has a good question. What happens to the leads you move to trash?
All right. So let's, so first of all, they drop out of all of your smart lists automatically, because that's just a filter behind the scenes that smart list will filter out folks who are in the trash. But you can go back in and find them. They're still assigned to you, so you do have the capability of going back and double checking on anybody you've moved to the trash. A quick way of doing that is just going to all people and go to filters and go to stage and include trash. And that's going to pull up everybody who's still in the trash stage. Now, something else we coach is that since you guys don't have delete privileges, but you do have trash, is that we do, if I'm talking to a team just getting set up, or a new person coming on who's got admin privileges, say, well, the trash stage is here for you guys to use and to sweep through once a month, sometimes once a week. It depends on how often you want to do it, how much work you want to have, to see if these are junk leads. And a lot of them are pretty simple to see if they're junk. They might not have names, they might not have phone numbers, they might not have emails, they may not have any of that. They may have just come through as a bare inquiry, and you have no contact information. In that particular way, they don't do any good, and if they might get deleted by the admins. If they're deleted, they don't come back. They're gone. So, but you guys can always go in and review the trash, and it would be just for you, for any admins on the call, team owners. You guys can review the trash for everyone, or just for a specific individual.
And it does affect reporting, correct? They come out of reporting. So
that's true. If they're in the trash, they come out of the reports.
Because you might want to say like, oh, these are all bad leads coming from this one source. But I think it comes back to what we said originally with defining the stage. Like, you should define what is trash and what is not. So the agents don't just trash everybody that doesn't answer the first call,
Right.
It's funny. And then Chuck has a question that was actually where I was headed when you started saying this anyway. Pawns now can be kind of I don't want to say similar to trash, but conceptually, well, it's funny when you said the action plan thing, that's what triggered it in my brain. So ponds are a very new feature. Everyone has them now, right, Jeremy, I believe?
Yep, Ponds is
Rolling out?
Ponds is a general release. It's a part of everyone's account.
Cool. So pond is kind of like a stage in some sense, right? Like you can still have a stage, but you're moving
Right.
them. But similar to trash, they come out of reporting. They come out of your total lead count. So don't freak out if you have 20,000 leads and then you move people and then you have 15,000. And it stops all the action plans, which is very important. No.
Right. So, but Ponds is a good place to put folks who might be considered, if you're just not having any luck with that person, don't trash them. In most cases, these are leads you've invested in. So if they're still within some part of the life cycle, if you've had any luck or just, if, you can put them into a pond. And ponds are basically groups of agents who have the ability to see the leads in together. They're not assigned to one person individually, they're assigned to the pond. So everybody who's part of a pond has the ability to go in and fish for the leads in the pond. So it's a good alternative to trash. And you guys can assign folks to the ponds as well that you're part of. So for Jane here, right down here where it says, well, this is someone in the pond. Let me go to someone who's not in the pond. So Buck, you guys have the ability to assign them to the pond. So if it's not a junk lead, if it's not trash, but it's a lead that isn't being responsive to you or so on and so forth, you can click agent and you can choose to go to a pond, or you can even assign, you go to a pond basically. So you can put them in the new pond, click the check mark, and they fall off of your lists, but they go into the pond and are available for the groups who are in those ponds. So it's an alternative sorting, and it's a way of alternatively sorting. At the same time, I like to think of it as a way of making sure that you're able to focus. It's removing the static from your days where if you've got 500 leads, but but you've tried a bunch of them, make sure that you're moving them to another stage and talking with your admins and coming up with a plan on what is a good candidate to go into a pond and which pond.
Yeah, and by the way, quick note on the pond lead versus the people in the pond. So the two important things of note about the pond lead. Number one, I believe the pond lead gets notified if something happens. Is that accurate, Jeremy? Like if a lead replies or something, not just activity, but if they reply to something, doesn't it notify the pond lead? Is that accurate?
The pond lead is not like a pond manager. The pond lead has to be designated for any because if there are, Lee, I'm sorry, when you mentioned this earlier, you mentioned that the action plans stop. I have to double check my information on that.
So I triple checked that. I'm pretty sure it does. However, caveat that's really important, you can run an action plan from somebody in the pond, and that comes from the pond lead. The real name on it, email is going to be the pond lead.
And that's the intent of the pond lead. If the pond lead has to be there to be the person that any automated messaging comes from. So like Lee said, you can run action plans on folks in the pond, and in some cases that's advisable. It's my understanding that if you're a pond agent and you claim that lead, if you go in and fish and you say, I'm going to take this lead back out, and you reply to that person, then that's like one-to-one regular work. That's like a regular lead for you. But if you're working the lead in the pond and you reach out to them, and if they reply, they're going to reply to you, and you're going to get notified of that reply. So whether it's an email or text or call, that should come to you because you were the person to get that, to send the message out. But that doesn't keep the other agents who have access to that lead from also seeing that response. So if you don't have a chance to go back in and check that pond lead for 6 hours and someone else does, then it's a little bit like a first to claim group in that way, that another agent can come and say, aha, this person replied. Now you guys could say, you know, we all want to be treated fairly. So, you know, come up with a kind of an internal process on that. But you can go, but that's an alternative, is that the first person who sees the response can also pick it up and run with it.
Right. Especially if it's a response to an action, like you said, a response to an action plan or more of a generic. I would, my policy around that would be, if you reach out to them and you want to work them and you're going to work it, take it out of the pond.
Mine too.
And if it's an action plan triggering somebody saying, oh yeah, I'd like some more information on that, then it's just whoever is actually just being active,
right,
in the pond. Sky is a great question. It's like kind of tying all this in together and says, so when is a good time to trash a lead? Like, wouldn't you always use an unresponsive or a cold lead stage instead of trashing, especially if it affects reporting? You know, funny, I hopped on the Wailopo office hours yesterday and we were talking about this. There was somebody on there. It was so funny. She's like, I've trashed hundreds of leads. She's like, I wish I put them in a pond and put Raya on them. And then it just, you know, then stuff would happen. Sky, and Barry said the same. He's like, we don't use trash. He's like, trash doesn't exist in my world. He's like, no one is trash. If someone has done something, and this used to be the case with some people I worked with where I think it was an REW integration where the person can come back and update their contact information later on. Because of the API and the way it was set up, they were tied to that contact. They were cookie tied to that contact. So They can always come back and say, hey, now I want to talk. Here's my phone number. So I'm a big fan of not trashing it unless it's like spam or solicitation or just something crazy. But even then, you know, you may want that in your reporting. Like, we're getting a bunch of spam leads from source A.
Right. And that's absolutely another whole line of questioning. I mean, again, trash is a tool. I mean, you can use it. I would, you know, again, these are leads that you've invested in. Why throw that away unless it's really something that you really don't want? There are other things that you can do to mark it as completely inactive, like Sky says, a cold lead, or unresponsive is another way of you know, teeing someone up for additional nurture who may not have responded yet, but definitely getting them on, you know, a different action plan, or trying something different, or putting them in a pond. Yeah, I mean, I think trash should be used sparingly, and should be, and that's another reason that we don't, that the deletion of leads is like an admin process, so that those leads that that you've paid good money for don't just disappear.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's a great question. I think, you know, and I know people don't like this answer because I always give it and then people still respond with like, just tell me what to do. But like, it does come down to an overarching strategy, right? You should say like, our goal is to get people out of lead. Here's your choices: nurture, hot prospect, active client, or whatnot. It can be, we use nurture for people who are more than 90 days out or we don't connect with. And then we use pond for like these 10,000 leads that have been sitting in our database forever that we don't know what to do with, and we just want to get, I mean, that would be, if somebody called me out of the blue and said, how do I set this up? That's what I would use. The default stage of the follow boss, but still define them a little more deeply. Like, active client means you have a signed buyer brokerage, you know, not, oh, it means they wanted to talk to you about houses. And then using a nurture or a long-term nurture for a, we're not going to stress these too much, but they're still on our radar. Using a pond for like out of sight, out of mind, but maybe have somebody do some sort of marketing or something, an action plan or whatever that is. And then trash is legitimately for people that are just no way, no how, never gonna do anything for sure, or spam.
Awesome.
There's a pond stage there. That's interesting. Is that pre-pond probably?
Yeah, that's pre-pond functionality. We had a workaround, which was basically assign a pond as a stage. And then we also, part of the workaround was that you had to have a user on your team who was going to be assigned all those leads. And, that's, then the agents could log into that account. It was messy, and it had, everyone was a collaborator. Everyone had multiple logins. The new Ponds functionality is a lot more user friendly.
Cool. Anybody else have any other? We can definitely wrap a little bit early if anybody has questions or wants to come on. And Jeremy's been known to send stuff to people that come on, so just dangle a little carrot.
True.
Come on and ask a question or tell us
Yeah,
about
anybody who wants to raise their hand and ask a question out loud.
That's definitely
a thing. I get a lot of questions about action plans sometimes during my team sessions, is because folks still consider action plans to just be drip campaigns. And obviously we've baked a lot more functionality into them than just emails. So the stage changes, tag ads, and so forth, those other adding and removing collaborators, those types of additional functionalities can be really excellent additions to action plans that you may already have in place. All you have to do is add a step and put it in the right place in the plan. If you don't have action plans that are already firing tasks for you, those tasks can be really excellent ways of making sure that your agents are touching things at the right time. Oh, I talked about closing earlier. We talked about the closing stage, or the close stage. I'm sorry. One of the automations that we have is, if the stage changes to closed, it automatically activates the post-closing action plan. And this is one I always like to pinpoint as part of the automations, because I love this. If I was a customer, I would want my agent to do this for me, because I would want to feel even better about my relationship with the person who helped me find a home or help me sell my home. So this one, and again, it uses that stage of closed. That can be changed if you don't have the closed stage, if you've removed that, or if you have another one you want to fire on. But this is a great set of tasks, one every month for the first 6 months or so, and then a final one. Basically, sending a handwritten card, calling and checking in, sending a note with some recommendations for the neighborhood that they just moved into, an email to check in, ask if they're willing to write a review, and then make sure that they get the link to the page where they can write a review. Give them a quick call and text, ask them if they, and then at the end, towards the end, ask if they know anybody else who's interested in, if they're starting, if anyone there they know is starting a real estate journey. And then the last step, on the day of their home anniversary, they get a card, and this action plan ends, but hopefully you've got a customer for life, because you've provided, the back end support that they needed as, part of their process, part of helping make their home more of a home. And this is an automation that that works really well with that stage change. And a lot of times, as Lee talked about at the very beginning, is that the closed stage change may not be something that you're paying attention to. You may have a transaction coordinator or someone else on the team who's actually flipping it to that stage. But the definition of that stage, again, our definition of that stage is that it's someone who recently closed, keep them in the stage while you wrap up paperwork, send a thank you card, and ask for referrals or reviews. So the closed stage, to make this action plan work, the closed stage might last a year. And then after that, the action plan that you set them up on could also switch them to past client instead of closed, so that they're not still, so there's things that you can do there. And that's a step that I recommend a lot, is that they say, oh, this makes sense, but how long do I want to keep them in closed? I said, well, make the action plan do the work for you.
Yeah.
The last step can be flip them to past client.
I think that's a really great idea. And I think for anybody who wants to dig deeper into this, I think, my recommendation would be to kind of map it all out. Like, I know it sounds like a lot, and it's a lot of things to think about. And then you have to think about what are all these actual items in these. And for one, for those who don't know, there is a pretty solid action plan library that you can go in and search. So under action plans, browse library. There's only 408 buyer lead action plans.
Yeah. Yeah, there's like 600 action plans in here for various different things.
25 closing ones. Some of those are just ones that people have opted to share. So some of these are real life plans that people are using that they've opted in to share. But I would just recommend that you kind of map it all out. It's like, okay, when people come in, we want the agent to focus on. Once they get to nurture, we want some stuff to happen. Once they get to close, we want them to have, 365 days of, every 90-day touches or whatever. And then a year after that, for their home anniversary, we're just going to hit them up once a year on their home anniversary. So it's not about having a crazy complicated plan, but I think it's about having an overarching strategy and then digging back into like okay, now how do we do it?
Right, helping to and the stages help you keep the plan moving forward.
And a quick plug, in 2 weeks, we're going to do an office hours on smart lists.
Awesome.
So taking all these stages plus tags plus any of these other things and then making them into a whole other type of category. So, and that'll be on the 17th, 2 weeks from today. And we will also post it in the group and it'll go out in your emails. Jeremy, anything else on stages you want to cover before we wrap?
No, I think we've hit on everything. I just encourage everyone to, kind of just when you finish a conversation with a client, just take a pause and see, do I need to update my stage?
Awesome. And if you're watching this after the fact on the Facebook Live in the group, feel free to drop a comment or tag me or Jeremy. We're definitely happy to answer any further questions. You guys all have a great day and hopefully we'll see you soon.